Hello, everyone, and welcome to a segment of Lore You Should Know. I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by Mr. Chris Perkins.
Hi there.
And today, in this segment where we delve into little bits of Dungeons & Dragons lore for your fun and edification, as well as perhaps being useful in your game, we are going to talk about the multiverse and how it is formulated through large, prominent, extraplanar beings, one of which being the Lady of Pain.
Oh, the Lady of Pain.
She is very painful. Or no. Or is she? Does she experience pain?
Does she experience pain? That's a good question. I don't know. We've never statted her up for reasons. So probably not.
What are those reasons? Why wouldn't you stat her up?
Oh, because A, we like to preserve the enigma that is the Lady of Pain.
Mm-hmm.
B, we feel like allowing you to simply hack at her with swords and blow her up with spells would demystify her and just turn her into another run-of-the-mill threat, and she is far from that. The Lady of Pain, for those who don't know, is a central figure to the Planescape setting, which is the uber setting that sort of helps define the entire multiverse of D&D.
Right.
And she is her face is often depicted on Planescape products. It was embedded in the Planescape logo. That's how important she is.
Yes.
And she's depicted as this emotionless visage with radiating blades all around her head, wearing a long flowing gown, her feet never touching the ground, if she has feet at all. And she is bound to Sigil, the city at the center of the multiverse, which is shaped like a torus that floats above a spire.
And the torus being a circle.
A donut.
A donut.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the city of Sigil is built on the inside rim of that donut.
Right.
And that's where she dwells. As far as anybody can tell, she never leaves. And she's not always visible or present in the sense that you can see her in Sigil. Mm-hmm. When she shows up, it's usually because she's about to clean house.
Something has gone wrong.
Yeah, so she's taking care of business, and somebody is probably doomed to end up in the mazes, which is the place where she just blinks away anything that displeases her or is potentially damaging to the stability of this metropolitan nexus city. Mm-hmm. And people who go to the mazes do not generally return.
Right. So she's got a lot of power in that regard.
She does. She has so much power in that regard that she just decides no gods shall enter this city. And so no gods can. They can be worshipped there, mm-hmm. but they cannot set foot in Sigil. That's some pretty impressive power.
So is she a god?
No.
What would you define the Lady of Pain as?
I would define her as the multiverse embodied. That she is essentially a figment of, or a vestige of, all of the elements that make up the multiverse, sort of gathered into one force. Because as far as we know, she's been around since the formation of the multiverse, and may have to some extent even had a hand in it. And even though were the multiverse to be destroyed, it's likely that she might be the last one still left behind.
Could she then reimagine the multiverse?
Perhaps.
That is the case. And is everything that we experience in the Dungeons & Dragons multiverse, is it all...
It's just her dreams.
Her dreams. Yeah. Right? Is this the snow globe at the end of...
Yes. Our pain is her pain.
Yeah. So...
Now,
that's really fascinating to me.
Interestingly enough, just from a lore point of view, she came to exist along with the Planescape setting during the TSR era. Mm-hmm. As TSR's fortunes were getting rocky or whatever, they started to really crank out a bunch of campaign setting lines. The Planescape being one of the most polished that they'd ever done, mm-hmm. and one of the most expansive. Did I say expensive? I meant expansive, but it's also very expensive.
There were lots of products.
There were lots of products, and they were expensive box sets. Yeah. A lot of them. So they I was about to say crap those out. They popped those out one after another.
You were working there at the time.
Well, I was working for them as a freelancer.
Yeah.
And writing Planescape adventures for the magazines. And
so were you involved in also the creation of this multiverse idea or contributed to?
Well, the multiverse idea has existed forever. I mean, the multiverse has been around since first edition. The idea that the Lady of Pain is some prominent figure in the multiverse only emerged in the development of the Planescape setting, and that was mostly contrived by Dave Cook and other people who worked on the main Planescape box that sort of drove the whole line, which I was not privy to. But I am somewhat aware that the Lady of Pain is based on a real-world person.
Oh.
That being Lorraine Williams.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
For those who don't know, Lorraine was the owner of TSR in the final years of its existence.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And the Mazes was an aphorism for the TSR office.
Which
was at Sheridan Springs, and if you were familiar with the layout, it was very maze-like. You didn't know where. If you weren't accustomed to the building, it was very easy to get lost.
I see. Funnily enough, when in our interview portion of this episode, a lot of these threads will continue. So prominent listeners might be able to connect some dots here, or attentive listeners rather.
So, but because she is this ambiguous force that you can't really fight and you can't really confront without just being zapped away, she holds a sort of a special, unique place in that regard, and you could easily argue that she is more like a greater god insofar as her power, but she's not really worshipped.
Right.
So she doesn't have a following. Her strength and power is not based on the strength of her worshippers or followers. When gods lose their followers, they die off and they become husks that float adrift in the astral sea, in the astral plane. That won't happen with her. So there are distinct differences that tell us she's not a god.
Yeah.
Just some sort of omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent entity.
And what's the relationship between her and, say, Ao in the Faerun stories, as well as Modius?
She doesn't really interact with the gods at all. She doesn't talk to them. She doesn't deal with them. The fact that she just hedges them out of her city suggests that she doesn't even want them influencing her. So there's, as far as we can tell, based on what's written about her, she has no real direct contact with any of the gods, nor does she want to.
But there are other over-gods, I guess, in other settings.
Yes.
But those are just, in the hierarchy, those are just other gods.
Yeah, gods exist throughout the outer planes and in the astral plane and in other places, and they carve out their own dominions, and over-gods have other gods under them. They're basically the leaders of entire pantheons of gods. And Ao is one, and you could argue Zeus is another. And
Asmodeus might even be,
well,
maybe not an over god.
He is a god who sort of commands a plane and a number of followers and dukes and archdukes and things like that who aren't really gods themselves. But he doesn't have other gods under him, really. Not that we know of, but maybe he does.
Maybe he does.
We just don't know. But yeah, the idea of worshippers, gods, is so anathema to a being like the Lady of Pain, whose fundamental purpose, it seems, is just to kind of keep Sigil where it is, and as the hub of the great wheel, keep the wheel a-turning.
What? So that purpose is just preservation, like making sure that this conception of reality exists.
Correct.
So it's say the demons from their plane who want to, destroy all existence to a certain extent. Would they be in opposition to the Lady of Pain, or does she even
her? It's unclear that she has any influence or perception beyond Sigil itself. That she's even aware if demons and devils are fighting off on some far-flung plane. She might get a trembling. When your wheel gets a little wobbly or the tire gets a little low, you can feel it. She might be able to sense on some level that there's a disruption happening in the multiverse, but she's not necessarily have a mind to pinpoint it, and it's possible she might not be able to do anything about it unless it tries to come to her. But if, let's say let's say the Blood War did end, and demons ended up rampaging through the multiverse. It's possible then that were the multiverse to end, she might be able to, put it back together again.
And she might be the only being who could.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's really so.
Part of it, there's a lot of open questions with her, because the more you know about the Lady of Pain, the less interesting she is, and so great effort has gone over the years to maintaining that sense of mystery. What are her true powers? What are the boundaries of her powers? We never define them. Part of that is liberating. So if you're running a campaign with her based in Sigil, you could do whatever you want and not feel like you were bound by any sort of canonical constrictions. And it also helps. It also means that you can take some liberties and add story elements of your own, and say, well, she's actually, the product of multiple gods, or she's a god who basically descended upon, sat atop the spire, this city, for some greater purpose that has yet to be revealed, and maybe after another 60 turnings of the Great Wheel or some other event, another Modron march, who knows, will signal her to enact some plan that she's been basically.
Right. So it also means like her actions could be very inscrutable for
absolutely
for low level
inscrutability
people.
Is part of her oeuvre. The fact that you can't even read her facial expression because it's just sort of a frozen, emotionless state heightens that inscrutability.
So when you use her in your campaign, if you do, it's important to kind of keep those tenets true.
Yeah.
And you have used her in Dice Camera Action, have you not?
Teased a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Her face has manifested a few times in such a way that you're not sure if it's really her or if it's just some trippy mushroom-induced fever dream of one of the characters.
So that's interesting, because it almost feels to me like our conception of what the Lady in Pain is very similar to our own human existence, not knowing what is beyond this life.
Right. Yes. And part of it too is Planescape is very much built upon the idea that the universe is made up of philosophies, and you can't say for sure that any one philosophy is wrong, because there's no way to prove a philosophical belief necessarily. Because once you've proven it, it's no longer philosophy. It's fact.
It's fact, right? Yeah.
So because the multiverse is made up of philosophies, and the idea that if you believe in something strong enough, you can actually influence the multiverse and bend it toward your philosophy in some metaphysical way, the Lady of Pain emblemizes that. This belief that that change is and cycles are all part of existence, and that we don't know what her philosophy is, but the fact that she allows the factions to operate in her city more than they operate than anywhere else in the multiverse suggests that she is sensitive to philosophy, or that she likes it or wants it around her, and not just one philosophy.
But she wants the debate.
She wants the debate. She wants all of them. She wants to see how that's going to shake down. She wants to see people challenge each other in a forum. If you think of Sigil like a forum where there's all these sort of competing interests and beliefs, the fact that she's letting that happen says something about the nature of her and the nature of the multiverse.
Now, why is she called a Lady of Pain? What is it about pain that is emblematic to her?
That's a good question. We don't know. And it's not even clear that that's what she calls herself.
Right, because she doesn't speak.
Right. She doesn't speak. She is never told. We don't know if she has a true name. We don't know what her name is. It's because she doesn't speak. She's never told anybody. So the name is almost certainly not given. It was given to her, not something that she would have inherited.
Right.
So what that means is it was probably given to her because of the awe, the danger that she represents. Physically, she looks very imposing, scary. The blades suggest pain, but she can also do things to you. If she wants to turn you inside out, There's nothing you can do to stop her from doing that. And
Does she do that often?
Not often.
Well, what type of actions that people would do in Sigil would warrant that reaction from her? What
That's a
does
good
she not
question.
like?
She doesn't like it when people try to fundamentally change the ebb and flow of things in the city. So if you're trying to wipe out an entire faction because you don't like their philosophy, you might run into her at some point. And that would be bad for you.
Right. Then you get turned into
Yes.
Yeah.
If somebody enters the city and they shouldn't be there, a god in disguise, for instance, she might try to show up and scare the god away. If somebody brings some sort of magic item of mass destruction in the city, that could raise her hackles a little bit. And then there are just unknown reasons. There will be somebody in the city sitting at a bar. Suddenly the doors will blow open. She'll drift in and wink them out of existence. And you'll be like, what did he do? And everybody will be like, I don't know. He seemed like a pretty nice guy. And out she goes.
Yeah.
And that's part of the mystique, but it's probably because she knew something that the character was either going to do or had done. Time being something that probably doesn't concern her. It could be, anything. That creature was going to meet another creature, and they were going to have a little baby creature, and that baby creature was going to eventually destroy the multiverse. Well, not anymore.
Wow.
Things like that. And it goes back to being inscrutable.
Yeah.
We don't really know why. She just knows why. We don't know. We don't know what the mazes are exactly, because nobody who's gone there has ever come back. It's sort of a metaphor for death in a way.
Right. In a world where,
more
where
permanent.
resurrection is
right, but much more permanent than death. It's scarier because you can bring a dead character back. You can't bring back a character who's in the mazes.
And what's really interesting about, and as we're delving into this, how much of Dungeons and Dragons bends the rules of our reality, which is right. There's no death. You can come back. Magic is not real. Gods can walk among us. Much of what is interesting about the Planescape setting in the Lady of Pain is that it's very similar to we as humans, our existence here on Earth.
Right. Yeah, and that's how philosophy is born out.
Right.
It's us coming to grips with the idea that we can't possibly know everything, so we have to just sort of put, based on what we can perceive and what has happened before, put together some idea of why we're here and what we're all about.
Which is kind of interesting when you're like, oh, I want to play an escapist game of swords and sorcery. We're like,
oh my God, I'm in this deep philosophical nightmare city.
Right. Can we just kill some dwarves and elves and get back to throwing some magic rings and fires?
Getting loot. And now we're talking about,
Yeah. So basically philosophy majors love Planescape.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Lady of Pain has been a very much beloved character in the milieu, and part of the reason is she just has a cool look.
Yeah,
that helps.
Right.
And
it's neat. It's neat. I think
is.
We'll be playing. I want more people to start using her in their games, even beyond Sigil.
Right.
Because it's so fascinating.
It is, and you kind of have carte blanche.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks. If anybody has any more questions about the inscrutable nature, which you'll probably just be like, I don't know. But how can they get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter at Chris Perkins DND.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. We'll be back with some more fun lore coming up.
Super stuff.
That's awesome. All right.
The Dark Eight.
The Dark Eight it is.
The Dark Eight.
We shall discuss the Dark Eight.
Yes.
So I know very little about them, so this is going to be fun.